Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Sorare Teacher here. Now, it's been a couple of weeks since my last video. I've kind of been slacking off, kind of been pretty busy in my real life. The name Sorare Teacher isn't just because I try to be educational about Sorare. It's actually because I'm a teacher in real life. And as you know, as the school year progresses, we get towards the end of the year in the May and June, get a little bit busier in my real life job. So, for any of you who've been waiting for some videos, my apologies. It's just been kind of a crazy time in my life, in my real life job, right, as a full time public school teacher. So anyway, I just want to make a quick little video for you about kind of what I've been up to over the past couple of weeks, right? Last time I made a video, the MLS season had just started. I showed you guys that I was sort of in the process of making a stack with some New England Revolution players. I had guys like Buxa, Letjet. I also had a defensive stack with some Philadelphia Union players in Elliott and Wagner. I picked up some other pieces along the way to flesh out my threshold team, as well as some other bits and pieces to my Champions America team. Well, it's been a pretty eventful couple of weeks, I gotta say. And so I'm kind of excited to show you the things that I've done, the changes that I've made to my roster, the fact that I've brought in a lot of new star power to the team. So let's go ahead and go through a quick little rundown of some major changes that I've made. Well, as you guys can see here in my lineup for my rare players here, and as you guys know, pay attention to my videos at all. I'm not like a super huge gallery. My gallery is worth approximately 3 ETH, so somewhere around the lines of right now like $7,500 to $8,000. So nothing huge or crazy, but it is still a pretty solid lineup with a lot of quality. I'm a much more of a quality over quantity kind of guy. Well, you can notice that have kind of gotten rid of part of my offensive stack in terms of the revs, right? You can see one guy here, kind of like my shining star, my gem, in Adam Buxa. He's already gone. And the main reason for that is that I basically sold him yesterday. Over the last couple of games, one of them being the CONCACAF Champions League game, the other being the game against RSL over the weekend. Well, he got 4 decisives over 2 games. He had a brace against the Pumas, and then he had 2 assists against Salt Lake City over the weekend. And so his price shot up quite a bit. Now, if you've been paying attention at all to the current market for MLS players, really America's players in general, the prices have spiked quite a lot, right? They're some of the priciest cards in the market. Players who typically don't get scores nearly as good as some European stars do in the big European leagues. They're selling for like as much, if not more, than some European stars these days. And so what I did was I used that opportunity of him getting those 4 decisives in 2 games as a chance to honestly sell him, like sell high, and try to buy low some other players. So I actually sold him for 0.65. And if I actually go to Adam Buxa here, you can actually see where I sold him. So you can see here, the yellow is where I purchased him. I bought him for about 0.24 ETH, about the very beginning of January, like the first week of January. And then you can see where I just sold him. Right, some people have sold him for a little more since then, so I maybe missed out on a little bit more ETH, but not a big deal because he still fetched 0.65 ether, well over half an ETH for this guy. And I only had to hold on to him for 2 months, right? I only didn't use him for 3 weeks and managed to sell him for nearly a 300% return, which is pretty dang awesome, right? So sold him. I actually got rid of Kai Wagner as well, and I brought in Dwan Jones, kind of for the same reason. Wagner's price was kind of peaking. It was kind of getting to what I thought was kind of the peak for the price of a fullback. Because again, fullbacks are a bit of a risk compared to center backs because they lose a lot more possession. They're a little more at risk of getting points deducted rather than added to their scores. And so I did add another fullback, but what I did was I sold Wagner at a really good price, really high price, towards what I consider to be the peak. And I brought in Dwan Jones, who is, in my opinion, nearly as good. He might actually in the near future be as good as Kai Wagner. He's pretty young. He has a lot of room to improve, a lot more chances to prove himself. And so I actually brought him in thinking that because he's on the New England Revolution team, he's going to have a significant number of chances to get decisives, right? Whether it's goals scored, whether it's assists off crosses to people like Heel or Boo or Buxa. He's even had a couple good, really good crosses to Legit. One of those crosses ended up, being an assist on Legit's first goal for the New England Revolution. And so, as far as decisives go, I think he and Wagner will probably be about even by the end of the season on who has the largest number of goals and assists. I also really like Dwan Jones because since the Revs are really, really offensive minded, right? They have one of the best offensive lineups in the league. He's going to get a ton of passes in the final third, right? If you guys know anything about defenders, final third passes are worth their weight in gold. You get a lot of points. You rack up a lot of points really fast through those passes in the final third, right? In the attacking third. Well, as a fullback on a really good offensive team who actually controls a lot of possession usually because they're so good, they have so much talent, he has a lot of passes in the final third. So I think in the end, he'll end up being just about as good as Wagner in terms of decisives, in terms of him contributing to me winning prizes. But I was able to buy him at a slight discount and pocket some ETH that I was then able to use to buy some other players that I'll show you in a minute. So pretty much like a pseudo semi poor man's Kai Wagner, but honestly not by a lot. And I think by the end of this year or the end of next year, he'll basically be as good as Wagner in terms of SO5 scores, and he may even start playing for the U.S. men's national team. I think he's playing himself into contention for that left back position for the men's national team. Like I said, he's very young. He has plenty of time to improve, to show how good he is, and so I think potentially he might have some added utility in the future as that left back for the men's national team, right, for the U.S. men's team. So Wagner out, Dwan Jones in. You can also see the top here is where I got my most recent players, and as you can see, I may have made a pretty big mistake here. Now, the guy I've been using for Champions America this whole time has been Tyler Miller. If you watched any of my previous videos, I made a pretty good case for him being a guy that you should use, right? One of the best shot stoppers in the league, one of the highest save percentages in the league over the past couple of seasons. He's very reliable, very consistent. He's had double-digit clean sheets in 3 of the past 4 seasons, which is really what you want to have in your goalkeeper, right? Because a clean sheet is an instant 60-point decisive for your goalie, right? So you want that when possible. He's one of the best at getting a clean sheet. However, that game over the weekend against the Red Bulls, if you watched Dane Sinclair fill in for him, Dane Sinclair probably won the starting job over in Minnesota. Tyler Miller was out with the flu. Dane Sinclair started in his place, and he probably, when I mean Dane, he probably had the best game of his entire life, easily, all-star caliber quality game. He saved a penalty. He saved 8 shots in total, some of them being diving shots. Saved a shot with the edge of his foot. He really went all out to protect that 1-0 lead that Minnesota had to really win the game. They would not have won the game without Dane Sinclair having that crazy game that he actually had. And so the problem with that is, I think, in my opinion, right? I don't know. I'm not the coach, right? I'm not Adrian Heath. I don't know what they're actually going to do, but in my opinion, I think Dane Sinclair won the starting job for the foreseeable future. If Sinclair ends up having a rough next couple of games, he doesn't consistently have that level of performance, then Tyler Miller probably goes right back into being the starter, which is why I'm not selling him. So I'm going to keep him because I think he does become the starter eventually again. If not Minnesota, definitely somewhere else. But for right now, at least for the next couple of weeks, in my opinion, Sinclair will be given a chance to prove himself as the starting number 1 keeper in Minnesota. So in essence, I've kind of lost my my starting goalie for Champions America because I think Tyler Miller's just simply going to be riding the bench for a little while until Sinclair screws up or until either Sinclair or Miller get traded to somebody else. But I want to keep him. I'm going to hold on to him because he either gets his job back because Sinclair is he's not a consistent guy. He's pretty inconsistent. Or he might get even traded to somebody else if Sinclair ends up being the guy who sticks into the number 1 spot for Minnesota. So I'm going to keep him. It's a bit of a risk. But I am very, very confident that Miller either becomes the starting goalkeeper again for Minnesota or becomes a starting keeper for somebody else after a trade because he's just that good. He's better than other goalkeepers in the league who are starting. And at some point, whether it's Vancouver, whether it's Montreal, whether it's Toronto, even, somebody will give Miller the chance to be a number one goalie again because he is, like I said, one of the best shot stoppers, one of the most consistent shot stoppers in the league over the past 4 seasons. All right, now here's where I made some of the biggest changes over the last couple of weeks. Some of my biggest and proudest purchases, in my opinion. If you've noticed the recent market, you've probably noticed that a lot of prices for some really top quality star players in Europe have dipped quite a bit, right? That's because the seasons in places like Belgium and the Netherlands and Portugal, they're slowly coming to a close, right? I think there's only about 1 or 2 more months for most of those European seasons left. Well, because of that, a lot of people are selling off their star players. A lot of people are rotating out of Europe, and they're rotating into American and Asian players, right? Because those leagues have just started, whereas Europe's about to end, and these players will lose their utility for like 2 to 3 months or so, right? And if a player can't play, then they're worthless to you. So a lot of people are rotating out of these European stars and rotating into American and Asian players. Well, that has led to some pretty good bargains, in my opinion. And I actually picked up two of the biggest stars on the biggest or highest quality forwards that you can get in Europe, in Challenger Europe, especially. I picked up Rafa Silva. Um, if you guys are familiar with Benfica, he is pretty much the engine that drives the success of Benfica for a while now. Actually, if I go to Benfica, we can actually take a look at it. If you haven't checked out Sorare Data's new team pages, you really should because they look amazing. Like they're so informative. You learn a lot, way better than they used to be. If you look at the last 40 games for Benfica, you can really see just how important Rafa Silva is to probably the best or second best team in Portugal. You can see his average SO5 scores of 59 over 40 games, last 40 games. He's had the most decisives of anybody in Benfica over the last 40 games. He plays pretty much every game, right? He's one of the top players in terms of minutes played. So again, his success pretty much drives the success of Benfica, right? He doesn't play necessarily all the way up front either. He typically plays on the wing, which is really nice because that means he gets a really good score for all around, right? He has a really high all around score potential compared to your typical center forward. So, really, when you're looking at European forwards, he is one of the best, right? He starts when he's healthy. He plays pretty much full minutes when healthy. He has more decisives than anybody else. He plays in the wing, so which means he has higher all-around score typically than a typical center forward does. So he has everything you want, and I mean literally everything you want in a forward for your Sorare team, right in your Sorare gallery. So I picked him up. I think I bought him for 0.38 ETH for a forward card. And like I said, that's a forward in Challenger Europe. And he's one of the best forwards in Challenger Europe, right? For just 0.34 ETH. That, in my opinion, is a steal. I think when next season starts, when the next European season rolls around, he'll probably be selling for over half an ETH easy. So just simply by holding on to him, I think I'm going to profit like maybe even double my my investment. I easily think I'm going to clear like a 50% return on investment by the start of next season. I'm that confident. So I bought him early. His price will probably drop a little bit more as the season comes closer to an end. But I didn't want to take the risk of losing out on a cheap guy. Again, I consider 0.38 to be cheap for a guy like this, who's one of the starting forwards on one of the best teams in Europe. So I picked him up, and I plan to use him for the rest of the season and at least hold him into the start of next season and see what kind of prices he's fetching on the market. So like I said, I think I can double my investment, or at the very least, like bar minimum, get a 50% return on my investment. All right, last but not least, one of the most exciting players really in all of Europe, especially over the past 2 years in Europe in the Belgian league, is Paul Anawachu. Now, if you've been playing Sorare at all for a while, you know who Paul Anawachu is. He is easily one of the most prolific scorers in all of Europe, especially in Challenger Europe. I want to show you just how good Paul Anawachu has been for Genk in the Belgian Pro League. Now, when you get as forward, the number one thing you buy a forward for is decisives, right? Scoring goals, getting assists, really bullying his way in the box. Well, there literally is almost nobody better than getting decisives than Paul Anawachu in Europe. He scored 29 decisives in the last 40 games. Actually, as a matter of fact, if I go to Anawachu's page on Transfermarkt and really show you his impact over the past 2 seasons in Genk, you'll see like you literally cannot get much better than this guy. So you can see this season he has 19 decisives in 27 league starts. Excuse me. If you add in or factor in the international games in the Europa League and the Champions League, he's got a couple more decisives, so like 21 decisives total as a starter of the season. Like that's already exceptionally good for your forward. If you look at last season, you can see that that's not a fluke, right? Sometimes you have players who are like one season wonders, guys who like just you know are amazing right out of the gate, and then they sort of like regress next season or the seasons after that. Well, if you look at his previous season for Genk, you can see that he's not a one season show, right? He's not a flash in the pan like so many other guys are in Europe. Last season, he had 31 decisives in 33 league games. Okay, let me say that again 31 decisives in 33 league games. I think he's played 100 games over, I think roughly 100 games now for Genk. He's scored in the league, I believe, 62 times. Like he's had scored like 62 or 63 goals in 100 games for Genk. Like that's an incredibly good return for a guy you are starting at forward, right? And so I picked him up, as you can see, for 0.345 ETH. Again, I think at the start of next season, or at the start of the season in the summer, that will easily be at least 0.45, maybe half an ETH, maybe higher. It really depends on how much the platform continues to grow. The platform's been growing a lot, right? Like a ton lately, which has been one of the reasons why prices have shot up quite a bit over the past couple of months. And so if the platform continues to grow, people will continue to have a lot of demand for these rare cards, especially these top tier rare cards. Forward especially fetch a super high price because of how rare a good star quality forward is. Then I don't see why he can't sell for half an ETH. I don't see why he can't sell for zero point 0.6 ETH come next season. So just like Rafa Silva with Benfica, I'm kind of thinking that I can either double my money or at the very least get like a 50% return on him at the start of next season when people are buying up all these star players because the season's about to begin and they need one of these top quality guys to have a chance in a really tough division like Challenger Europe. Like if we play in Challenger Europe, you need the star guys. Otherwise, you simply don't have a chance because the point average you need to sort of really win a card is exceptionally high in Challenger Europe. So these guys give you a chance to win something in Challenger Europe. So I think their prices will easily shoot up as we rapidly approach next season. The one concern I have is about Anawachu. There's always rumors floating around that he'll go to like a better club in Europe or some other top five division. If that's the case, then maybe his performance suffers a little bit. But honestly, the way he's performed his entire career, I wouldn't put it past Anawachu to have as much success as he has had in the Danish league and now in the Belgian league, where he's been a prolific scorer pretty much his entire professional career. So if he goes to start to a high quality club in the top five league, honestly, I just see that as in a way kind of a win because instead of having a Challenger Europe card or Challenger Europe forward, I now have a Champions Europe forward, and those prices are typically higher than Challenger forwards. So his price might go up even higher if he ends up being a good Champion Europe forward in a top five league instead. So honestly, sky's the limit for this guy. He either stays in Belgium and continues pumping in goals, pumping in decisives, or he goes to a top five league and he has a chance to continue success and be worth way more than he is now because he'll be a Champions Europe forward instead of just a Challenger guy. So there is a little bit of concern that he'll be transferred somewhere else, but honestly, if he does transfer somewhere else, that does give him an opportunity to be worth a lot more in the future potentially.
So that's kind of what I'm up to. As you can see, I've made a lot of changes, some Europe heavy changes, some changes to my stacks. But overall, I feel really good about these cards over the next 6 to 12 months. I know Sorare players, they never hold on to their cards for long, and that'll probably be the case for me. I'm sure by the next time I make a video, I'll have made some even more changes. But for right now, I'm feeling really good about the cards that I have right now in my gallery, both for Champions America this season, as well as working my way into the European season in the summer later this year. So that's all I got for you. Next time you see me, I'm actually gonna make a video on power rankings for the MLS season so far. We're about 3 weeks into the MLS, so I want to share my down and dirty thoughts on the season. Typically, I dive into stats. I'm a really stats oriented guy, but I'm thinking I'm just gonna give you my first impression on the teams in the MLS just from the first 3 weeks and see who I think are contenders, who I think's trash, and who I think is in between. So until next time, this is Sarah Teacher, and I will see you then.